So, I have had numerous people request that I go into the topic of psychedelics, or more specifically, DMT. Now, many of the topics I discuss tend to be very broad, and so it takes some time to really dig deep into the meat of the subject. And the subject of DMT is no exception. In other words, when people ask me to present this, I'm not really sure what the question is. So what I thought I would do is give you my overview on something with properties that seem magical. After all, we are talking about psychedelics here. So, you ready to take that trip? So right now, if you were to go foraging in the wild, most people understand that you can't just go around eating or even touching anything and everything that grows on the planet. More than that, as a rule of thumb, you don't eat or touch any plant without knowing what it is. Plants have a very necessary relationship with the sun, as other life has a very necessary relationship with plants or vegetation. As a consequence of photosynthesis, plants create new molecules, and these molecules are manufactured as a part of the natural growth cycle of the plant. The plant also creates secondary molecules that it uses mainly for defense. So after adaptation, mutations, what we end up with is an extremely wide range of plants that have a very long range of effects on other plants and animals in the environment. Everyone knows some plants can heal and some plants can kill. Plants do this by creating nutrients, by creating toxins. In the plant kingdom, we of course have roots, leafy greens and cabbages, fruits, seeds, seaweed, and this really is the range of what we can eat. You see, most vegetation have those nutrients or have those toxins locked in. Some are released when we eat them, some are not. Some require a little something extra for them to be released. For instance, if you simply eat a plant that contains THC, it really does nothing. You need heat, or it has to undergo decarboxylation to release the THC, correct? This is why herbal teas are great, because you have heat as well as a carrier solution. There are vegetables as well, such as tomatoes, that if you don't heat them first, you miss out on some of the other stored nutrients. Some plants, such as grass, your digestive system just can't get the job done, which is one of the main reasons for someone eating meat, to get the nutrients that would otherwise not be bioavailable or accessible to you, because that animal can get those nutrients released. Now, plants that create toxins, well, they have no problem releasing those, and some of these plants are quite nasty. A lot of the time, they look like plants we do eat, and some appear to be perfectly harmless. Now, looking at this, you probably wouldn't want to eat it in the first place, but it seems like a harmless flowering plant. But a common side effect of eating water hemlock is a violent death, due to a chemical called cicutoxin. And even if you do survive eating it, having the shakes and amnesia are lasting effects. Tobacco is another one of those plants. I know people smoke it because it's psychoactive and addictive, but you eat it, you die. The difference, of course, between a nutrient and a toxin is a nutrient helps improve bodily functions. A toxin causes your body to do something that is unnatural. Now, how do people define what a toxin is? Let me tell you. If we were out together foraging in the forest and we were to stumble across some wild mushrooms, we decide to eat them and then shortly after start tripping. Now, if you don't think that that is an indicator of toxicity, go ahead and see what happens when you try to eat a handful of those same mushrooms. Some plants don't even have to be toxic for them to give us toxic substances such as alcohol, yes? I mean, drinking too much old grape juice can be fatal, right? So out of this endless spectrum of chemicals, of molecules that plants can produce for us, that we can extract from them, we are here to focus on one in particular, that is DMT, dimethyltryptamine. There is more than one type, as it is found all over the world in abundance. Now, the one important thing you need to consider right now is that DMT is prohibited. Where is it prohibited? Well, let me explain. The first thing to understand is that the US, in particular, when it comes to making laws, we rule. That's why we have the most people locked up, because we have the most laws, if that makes any sense. And the reason for this is because most of those laws are not really laws at all. They are regulations. Regulations that are written by alphabet agencies like the FDA. And because these regulations are under a federal body, if you break those regulations, you are considered to be breaking the law. When you have massive corporations like a pharmaceutical company, that company pays lobbyists to get agencies like the FDA to write these regulations in their favor. And what you end up with is a bunch of prohibition to protect the profits of these types of entities. And in the case of DMT, well, this is what happened. Back in 1961, there was a convention held for the signing of an international treaty to prohibit the production and distribution of narcotics and the like, such as opium, heroin, cocaine, giving governments complete control over these substances, making them illegal in your hands. But this didn't include psychoactive drugs like LSD. So, in 1971, they made sure LSD, tetrahydrocannabinol, and DMT made their list in Schedule 1. So let me tell you what that means. In the schedule of controlled substances, you have 4 schedules. Schedule 1 is the most restrictive, and Schedule 4 is the least restrictive. Now get this. A Schedule 1 controlled substance is defined as a substance claimed to create a serious health risk to the public, whose therapeutic value is not acknowledged by the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. Cannabis and certain synthetic and natural tryptamines are included on this list. So everyone in the world who is a member of the United Nations signed that 1971 treaty, making DMT and other substances for the most part illegal, almost worldwide, unless you live in the jungle. If you live in the jungle, I'm sure you would have no problems. I could be wrong. So that's that. Now, that convention did not cover the plants themselves, but the preparation of those plants that contain substances like DMT. Even if it's just boiled in water, it would still be considered a preparation or control of that substance that the plant contains. Now, folks, if you think they care about the health of the public, you are mistaken. And you truly do live in a fantasy world. They started this prohibition garbage back in 1912, and since then, those laws, not people, but those laws have spawned an entire legacy, dynasty of underground crime of the worst kind. Forget about guns. That's another discussion. Think about all the gangs that have risen as a result of prohibition. It started with the prohibition of opium in the early 1900s, and look at the state we are in now with that. Look what happened when they did that with alcohol. It was so bad they had no choice but to take that one off the list. Kind of. They did it to cannabis, and now our jails are overpacked. Folks, do you understand how ridiculously silly it is to have to sneak around growing and selling plants? This is the world we live in. Hemp is illegal to grow here, and in some states, heirloom tomatoes are illegal to grow. It is insane. It drives people insane. And so you have people dying over plants. You know, in countries like Portugal, they've decriminalized almost all drugs, within quantity limitations, of course. but their drug offenses are down to around 17,000 out of 10 million plus people. Here in the US, it is well over a million. Comparatively, Portugal has below half the number of drug offenses. So what are we doing wrong? See, some of you don't know the extent to what these laws are designed to do. For example, did you know that countries that harvest plants that have molecules like DMT, pharmaceutical companies, they go into these countries, they then take these plants and attempt to replicate and patent a synthetic version of the substance. Then, after they have their own version, they attempt to decimate the original plant population so that the only thing these countries end up growing are subjected to patent laws. Crazy, right? It's been done. I mean, you can't grow wheat without using Monsanto seeds. I don't think there is any real wheat left. It's all been contaminated by the mutant wheat seeds. And so therefore, according to the laws, they own the rights to almost all wheat. Now, DMT is a molecule. I've never taken it, but I'm sure a few of you have, and I'm sure some of you know someone who has. And from what I can gather, this molecule, in my opinion, is something like a neurotransmitter stimulant. Think of it this way. You know how it feels when you stay up late, or maybe you haven't been getting enough sleep, or any sleep at all. You know how it feels when you're tired and it becomes difficult to think? And you know how it feels after you get that good night's rest and those neurotransmitters are replenished due to your own DMT and melatonin production. When you wake up, you're feeling refreshed. You had dreams, right? And now your mind is much sharper. You're more awake. I can imagine taking DMT would be like supercharging the neurotransmitters while you're awake. I know some people think that DMT may be linked to dreaming, and if that is true, then of course someone would theoretically be able to dream while conscious by taking DMT. Now, I truly believe DMT to be something that can produce light, because like I've emphasized in a previous video, how are you able to see anything while you're sleeping? How are those images, those visions manufactured in your mind or wherever they may be coming from? How do you see in your sleep? This is why I'm sure something like ayahuasca is virtual reality in a glass. Now tryptamines need other molecules to work, like DMT needs a monoamine oxidase inhibitor so that the DMT isn't destroyed by your stomach. Ayahuasca seems to be the common brew that varies by country relative to the plants that can be legally obtained or not. But does DMT have health benefits? Of course. Of course. People, we are talking about food here. Folks, do you understand that they want to patent vitamins and nutrients? People are already going to jail over raw cow's milk. Got people smuggling tomatoes and crap. This is in the US, a country where people aren't supposed to go to jail over growing food. Do you know how many places in America there are where you can be charged for having a vegetable garden in your front lawn? Look at the state of Florida, where it's strictly prohibited. We don't like the way it makes the neighborhood look. Wah. You know, this is one of the few places in the world where you can be punished for attempting to heal yourself. Am I lying? And this really is why people use drugs in the first place. They ultimately want to be healthy. They want to feel good. They don't want to be depressed or in pain constantly. So people drink, they smoke, they make healing brews, and they take these things as they would medication prescribed by a doctor. And when you prohibit the means to make people feel good, to become healthy, there is a problem. If someone could drink a glass of ayahuasca and be cured of depression versus taking psychotropic pharmaceuticals long term that may turn you into a psycho or kill you, then yeah, there is going to be an issue there when the better option is taken away. An issue that can only be changed by changing laws that are probably not going to change anytime soon. So there are some of you right now who are quite curious about DMT and its effects. And you wouldn't mind taking that trip or journey. For the most part, taking a brew of DMT along with someone who knows what they are doing seems to me, for the most part, harmless. with healing properties, as it is something that your body produces. But let's talk about that journey for a moment, shall we? Terence McKenna, an American ethnobotanist, is well known for his advocacy of DMT and the responsible use of psychedelics. His description of a DMT trip is very telling. In one particular instance, he describes smoking DMT and how usually it only takes about 4 hits to do the job. He states that after the initial first 2 hits, the effects start to take hold, loosening you up. The colors become more vibrant. The resolution of everything sharpens. He then says that taking the 3rd hit is the key. And after taking that dose, after closing your eyes, you begin to see colors rush in behind your eyelids. And they come together to form this floral, spinning, portal-like image that doesn't last very long. But the way he describes it, it takes at least one more hit to propel you through what he calls the chrysanthemum. Now, this is where it gets interesting. He talks about hearing a sound, a crackling, crumpling sound, which is the same kind of sound described by a few meditators activating the pineal gland. That same popping, crackling sound when certain crystals are struck and they give off that luminescence. Something like the crystals used in click lighters. This would suggest that DMT not only gives off light, but is also piezoelectric, giving off a spark of electrical energy. Now, there is still some debate whether DMT is piezoluminescent or able to give off light under pressure. We know that under normal circumstances, in order to see colors, you do need light. Could one of the functions of DMT be that internal source of light for the mind? It is interesting to consider because many people who have taken DMT, their experiences are quite similar, especially the rotating colors, this portal, if you will. From what I can gather from McKenna's description is that at this point, it seems to me that your mind is trying to focus on something other than what you can see with your eyes. And I'm going to tell you right now, this molecule may very well be allowing your mind to see somewhat into another realm. And I'm not talking figuratively, I mean literally. Mainly because of what McKenna describes next. And that are the entities that lie beyond the color portal, waiting for you. I understand that the experiences of DMT varies, yes, but I do believe that with continued use, this is a common thing. And it should be of no surprise if shaman and priest are using such substances to contact entities in what many call the spirit realm. We all know that all these ancient healers, priests, religious leaders, the ancient Egyptians, we know that they were on something of some sort. By the way, speaking of Egypt, not many people know this, but there is an attraction with taking DMT inside one of these pyramids. People have attempted this. Let me tell you something, folks. These structures, these pyramids, they are all over the planet. I mean, they are everywhere. I'm telling you, anywhere you live, there is a pyramid near you. And there is a reason why they were all buried. And some are being hidden. I believe that these pyramids are exactly what some of the ancients say they were. And those are gateways. But it's not what you think. And then someone asks, well, what are they gateways to? And I say, who said they were gateways for you to go anywhere? Remember, folks, these were the same people who believed in reincarnation of their kings. I don't know. The more I look at the pyramids, the more they look like some sort of technology to guarantee you get your ass possessed by something. Ask people who have been to the pyramids, who have been inside, how it feels without the DMT. So McKenna describes these beings as several other people have, and that is a mixture of armless, legless, vibrating beings, elves, gnomes, leprechauns, what have you, that approach you. And everything that these entities do, as described, them trying to get you to look at things, seems to be very seductive. Something someone would do to lure, which is the MO of dark entities or evil spirits. Yeah, I know we don't really know what they are. Keep telling yourself that. People report encountering all kinds of beings on DMT trips. People encounter them dreaming normally, before they sleep, when they wake up, during meditation, near-death experiences, remote viewing, and you can see the connections. You know, there are people who are trying to develop technology using DMT to intentionally contact entities in this other realm. I kid you not. Why? I don't know. But there is one thing I do know. This planet isn't big enough for us and them. That's why they are on that side of the veil and we are over here. What are people trying to make friends with these things? For what? Information? Trash. Garbage. You have to travel to another dimension to discover yourself? People are out there looking for spirit entities to hold their hand, reveal secrets, give them steps, and don't know who or what the freak they're talking to. You know, when it comes to ayahuasca and these other brews of DMT, there are origin stories, of course, about how these brews came into being. Then I think about the Book of Enoch, and I think, could it be these other entities that have provided the recipe? You know what taking DMT reminds me of? Melange. How many of you have ever seen the 80s movie Dune? Well, there is a fictional drug in this movie derived from a plant called melange, or the spice. And this was a drug that gave you longer life, vitality, heightened awareness, and it could unlock the ability for interstellar travel. Weird, isn't it? But the bad thing about the spice was that you couldn't just get off of it, and withdrawal often resulted in death. Now, we have something here that needs to be researched in greater